Hello and welcome to the Career Success Podcast. I'm Jason Connolly. If you're a new listener, thanks very much for joining us on the show. But if you are a regular listener, it's great to have you back. In this series, we speak to leaders in the world of business and people who've had tremendous career success. We speak to people all across the globe, across a wide range of industries. We lead the way in conversation to understand what makes someone successful, listen to their stories of rising to the top, the challenges they've overcome, adversities faced, and what success means to them. We will also discuss the lessons learned along the way. Myself and my guests will give practical advice on how to grow your business and climb the career ladder. If you're someone that has a passion for business, then this is the podcast for you. In this episode, I'm delighted to be joined by Michael Burne from Cardiff. Michael is the founder and chief executive of Carbon Law Partners, a national law firm. Throughout his career, Michael has worked for magic circle firm Allen and Overy. He was also a board director of a 150 million turnover financial services business listed on AIM at 32 in 2002. Michael started his own law firm, Carbon Law Partners, from scratch in 2010 with no money, no clients, and has billed over 1.5 million over the first 2 years in business. He's developed a really innovative law firm that is different. Michael has spoken at lectures, including notably Do Lectures in 2016 about his story and beliefs. The lectures have had views of over 150 million. Michael, thanks for joining me on the show.
Hi, Jason. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
So, first of all, tell us about before we sort of get talking about Carbon Law Partners and what you do today, tell us about your journey into law, because you've worked for one of the world's best law firms, which in itself is a career achievement. But tell us a bit about your story from the beginning.
So I guess I'm a fairly ordinary sort of bloke. I went to a comprehensive school in South London. I was the first university in my family when I went off, and I didn't know anyone in the law. So I didn't really know my way around or have anyone to help give me a leg up. So I went off to university. I did a law degree. I went to Leicester, had an absolutely fantastic time there, loved it. I probably did what most people do at university. I didn't do very much work in the first year, and I got the tap on the shoulder to ask me if I was serious about doing a law degree anywhere, never mind at their university.
Did that make you buck your ideas up? Or?
Well, it did. I went from about 194th out of 200 students in the first year to 6th in the second year and 1st in the third year. So they gave me a right kick up the backside, and it really did the trick. I'm very grateful to them.
Right, okay. And then you went, so tell us about your journey into law.
So when I was at uni, the milk round happened where law firms came to the law faculty and tried to find promising students to give what used to be called then articles, these days called training contracts. And
yeah,
I was really lucky. I got a gig with a city law firm then called Denton, Hall, Bergen and Warrens. There's a mouthful. And I loved it there. I wandered in, impressed by the glass lift, thinking that an atrium was something that people like me didn't deserve to be associated with in their lobby, and really feeling like I was on the set of a TV show that probably most of your listeners would be too old to remember, called LA Law. So I thought I'd arrived when I got to Denton, Hall, Bergen and Warrens. I think they're now called Dentons, one of those sort of mega global firms. And I had a fantastic training at the firm. I was very lucky, qualified there, stayed there. And then when I was a couple of years in, I went for lunch with Katrina Smith, who was the head of IP litigation, intellectual property at Allen and Overy. And I thought it was just a lunch, came back and got a call to say, we'd like you to come to Allen and Overy.
Wow.
So, given my background, blokes like me don't say no to going to a magic circle global law firm when invited to do so. And I dutifully went and had a really fantastic couple of years at Allen and Overy, and got to practice law on a pretty big scale, even as a junior ROIC. It was great work.
Do you think it's Katrina that you mentioned? What was it that you think that she maybe saw in you at the time that made her want to reach out to you in that way?
It's really difficult to say, but I think there was something about, I suppose, hoping that you were bright, hoping that you were able, hoping you were hardworking, but hoping that there was a bit more to you than just the standard sort of pinstripe brogue-wearing lawyer. And my background means that, as I say, come from pretty ordinary family, pretty ordinary schooling background. I like the normal things in life. I'm a sort of regular person, no airs and graces.
Yeah.
And we just got on over lunch. We really got on. I liked her a lot. I thought she was great. We sort of clicked, and I think it was that. It's always
Yeah.
relationships, I think, isn't it, Jason? It's like the relationships between people. You click with some
Mm.
people, and maybe not with everybody.
Well, it's great to hear stories as well when you hear people who haven't gone to an Oxbridge University, kind of rising up the ranks, especially coming from a comprehensive school. I went to a comprehensive, so I know that. But what did you learn from your time at Allen and Overy? Because to people in legal, everyone knows who they are.
I think I learned about the fundamentals of how to
Mm,
work with a team, how to work on world class legal services delivered by a fantastic law firm, kind of at a scale of operation that was just new to me. I mean, back in the day when
mm,
I was there, I was very fortunate. I had an office overlooking St Paul's. It's now a shopping centre, and Allen and Overy have moved much nearer to Liverpool Street. But
right.
I really am that old. But I learned an awful lot about how to do things properly for
Mm,
world leading brands, and I think that was really fantastic experience. I guess if I was really honest with you, I also learned that I felt quite constrained by
mm,
the way in which back then, and I'm talking in the late 90s, so a long time ago, the way in which the things I wrote were amended and changed with red pen back then. It wasn't done with track changes and all kinds of modern technology. It was literally a red pen on a printed document that you may have drafted for a partner who you were working with. And I
mm.
found I don't mind being corrected. I think we all need to learn. I've got a real passion for learning, but I always felt that I never got to give advice.
I can understand the need for accuracy, but it feels somewhat like a sort of marking situation. It reminds me of something of a primary school.
Yeah, it was a little bit like
Mm,
that. And of course, if you're a Magic Circle law firm with a global reputation, you don't want a 2-year qualified junior solicitor like me making mistakes
mm,
because that's just not what your brand stands for. But there was something about, I think this is more a comment on me than it is on Allen and Overy. I realized I wanted to not advise clients. I realized I wanted to be a decision maker. And I can
mm.
remember coming to that realization after doing a really exciting management buyout transaction that I wanted to not be the person advising on what the law was. I wanted to be the person deciding what to do with the law as a tool.
Right, so speaking to the decision maker and someone who's an owner managed business or going straight to the person who holds the purse strings.
Well, I can remember telling my dad when I was
Oh,
27 that I'd decided voluntarily to leave Allen and Overy. And it's a bizarre story because that week, Allen and Overy were in the headlines of the Times that my dad had started to read for having the UK's first £1 million partner. And
mm.
so I remember ringing my dad and saying, Dad, I'm going to leave Allen and Overy and I'm going to go into industry because I want to be a decision maker. And my dad wasn't very
Mm.
convinced by my by my move, if I'm honest, Jason. People like
Yeah,
us don't walk away from firms like that.
do you? Because I always think that the type of lawyer that you get, and I am speaking in really general terms, so no offense intended, but I always think that when you go to the West End and you see West End firms, the kind of vibrancy, the exposure people get at the junior level as a lawyer, the kind of contact they get with businesses, it's very different. And the type of candidate, even the way that candidates, I think, are a lot more dynamic in firms like the West End. I think junior lawyers, they get, trained in stuff, that, in terms of business that you might not get at, a large practice. I think there's quite a difference between, and I think that mindset that you summed up, is that a mindset that you often see at firms like that? I suppose what I'm trying to get at is, do you think there's a big difference between the sort of candidates in the West End and the city and so on, and your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think that's right, Jason. I think there's very much a horses for courses way of thinking about not just law but any industry.
Mm,
So some people suit certain environments better than others, and you go to one place for a different experience to another place. So, you can't fault a Magic Circle law firm with the pedigree of Allen and Overy, and I got
mm,
an enormous amount out of being there. And don't get me wrong, after I left, it didn't half help to open doors to say I was at Allen and Overy. So it has an enormous amount of value. But I think in terms of the kind of my type of personality, I think I've learned since then that I would rather the cut and thrust of the world of the entrepreneur than I would the world of the legal advisor to a blue chip city financial banking institution. But that's
Right.
it's a different
Yeah.
mindset, I think.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you, definitely. So you're sometimes in your bio, which I found it did make me smile. I'm sometimes described as disruptive and a maverick, or a rebel with a cause. All unfair, as I'm just asking why about many of the things in the legal profession. So tell us more about that. A rebel with a cause.
Well, in my mind, the the way in which law firms, as a
Mm.
generalisation, and it's a sweeping generalisation, and there'll
Yep.
be many running law firms shaking their fists if they ever listen to this. But as a generalisation, I think the business model operated by law firms is fundamentally broken. And I think it's
Mm.
broken because it doesn't suit lawyers and it doesn't suit clients. And much of my career actually has been spent being a client, a buyer of legal services, as opposed to a lawyer who, and dare I use the dirty word, is a seller of legal services. So
Right.
being a poacher gamekeeper means I suppose I've got a perspective on both sides of the line of what it means to be a consumer of legal services. And it struck me that the model,
Mm.
and I'm talking predominantly about not just the partnership model, but the pyramid structure of a law firm, was wrong.
That's interesting. So did you spent time in house?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And I think to people that don't know the sort of necessarily the difference, in house is working for a company as a lawyer, and there are distinct differences in the whole kind of mindset and the general actual job role itself. It's you're advising on business, Michael.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I left Allen and Overy, I went to
Mm,
a FTSE listed business called St James's Place, which is a wealth management company.
very well known.
Very well known, exactly. So, although when I told my dad I was leaving Allen and Overy to go to St James's Place, he said, "St James's who?" Because he hadn't heard of them back then. We're talking late 90s, and they'd only just
Right.
reversed into a listing on the stock exchange. So, fair enough, he
Okay.
may not have heard of them then. He certainly would have heard of them now. And so, yeah, I went into industry, and as a lawyer inside a company, you get exposure to commercial decision making, and at quite a young age you're really privileged, actually, I think, because you can be spending quite a lot of
Mm,
time with directors and decision makers. And that
mm.
really, really started to shape a lot of my thinking about what I wanted to do. But also, it gave me a model for a law firm.
Yeah, and I done a really interesting, just to sort of sidestep, a podcast about this the other day. Being an in-house lawyer, and even at a junior level, you're walking in, and you're dealing with directors. It's about how you hold yourself in these positions, because you might in turn be quite junior. Sometimes it's who do you go to as a lawyer? It can be a different world from that of being in private practice.
Absolutely. I mean, I was very fortunate. There was a legal director at St James's Place back then who was
Mm,
ex Herbert Smith. He was very qualified, very capable. He'd been there a number of years. He recruited me. I joined his team. I learned my craft, if you like, in house through working closely with him, as well as the other board members. And I learned about the industry as well because I didn't know one end of a pension or a life insurance policy from the other when I went to this business. So there was a
mm,
lot to learn and a lot to take in. And again, I was very fortunate. I got a really good schooling there and a really great grounding.
mm,
But
mm,
it also gave me this idea that I've come back to in the time that's followed. I saw the business model that they operated there, and
mm.
that has really stuck with me. And that as part, I suppose, of why I think some would say I was a bit maverick, and I would say that I was just finding a better way to do something from another
Yeah.
sector that already does it that way, which I don't think is that
Well,
maverick, really, is it? It's just a read across.
no, and I think legal. So what you mean is a consultancy model. So people traditionally, in an old-fashioned way, eat what you kill. But now we call it a consultancy model, a fee split model. And that's the model you're talking about,
Yeah, well, it is in part. So,
right?
what we have set out to do in our business is to create a
Carbon
platform.
law partners. Let's just bring this back to the current day, and that's what you set up in 2010 with no money. And
Yes.
this is the innovative model that you've set up, just to kind of paint the picture.
Yeah, absolutely. So the business is run on a platform,
Hmm.
and actually the platform can be used by multiple businesses, not just one. So to demonstrate its versatility, we created a fee share model law firm, and that's, as you've
Right.
said, called Carbon Law
Hmm.
Partners. But in September this year, we launched a second branded proposition. So someone
Hmm.
else is running a law firm using the same platform as Carbon Law Partners.
Hmm.
And so now what we've ended up with, and we intend to continue to grow, is not just Carbon Law Partners, which I'm really passionate about because it's the firm I started, and it's now developing with a range of partners across the country, all on a fee share model. So that's a
Hmm.
fairly well trodden path. I don't think there's anything hugely innovative and disruptive about that. That's something that's happening a lot now, and there are some really major players doing that in the UK legal
Yeah.
services market.
Hmm.
The bit that's different to me is what we actually set out to do wasn't just to do that. We set out to do more than that, and to build a platform on which you could build multiple brands in legal services and ultimately multiple brands in other professions as well.
Really interesting. Um, and was that to kind of encapsulate having kind of more niche businesses that specialize in certain areas?
Yes, in part, but what it was to do
Right.
is to recognize my sort of fairly bold assertion that the way law works as a profession is broken, and that what you need are new business models to bring new thinking. So, for example, if you're thinking about whether you want to become a partner in a law firm and buy into that equity with the bank loan that you probably will need to do it, do you want to do that, or do you want to back yourself to start your own law firm? And how do you cope with the cost, the fear, the risk, the anxiety of starting a law firm? And
Mm,
does that option feel closed to you? So I'm on a bit of a mission to grow law firms for people to put their brands on, and to be able to create an environment for lawyers to create their own future destiny. And never more so now than in these really remarkable COVID times.
yeah, it's why do you think law's broken? What's broken about the pyramid model?
What's broken to me is that you effectively have three tiers in the pyramid. At the bottom, you have the aspirers, the young lawyers coming
Uh-huh.
in, doing their training contracts, qualifying, becoming associates, working their way up the pyramid. And
Uh-huh.
if you're being unfair to them, they're not just aspirers, they're perspirers. They work very hard indeed, and they get paid about 30% of what they bill. That's the typical
Uh-huh.
law firm model, that the lawyer gets a third, the overheads get a third, and the partners get a third.
Right.
So that model, to me, there are lots of important things about it, but one of them is that it's not a fair remuneration model for the risks that are taken. Because when you do then get up to the next level above the aspirer level, you get into the partnership and you get into equity. You have to borrow money if you're not independently wealthy to pay
Hmm.
sometimes a six-figure number to buy into the equity of a law firm, and your
Yeah.
money sits at risk in the law firm.
Hmm.
And if the law
It,
firm struggles, you don't get it back and you still owe the bank.
yeah, it's you're very much preaching to the converted here. I totally agree with what you're saying. I think that the whole partnership LLP model has problems riddled all over it. I think that how can you have a partnership of equals when nothing is necessarily equal? And then this is where we place a lot of partners. We get people come to us. For example, the employment partner's unhappy because they're passing more work to the commercial partner than they're receiving back. And then all of a sudden you get these internal bureaucracy or these internal politics that happen, which make it difficult, which I think is why so many of these ABSs that have started up have done so well because of the changing model.
Well, and indeed, and if you survive through the partnership structure to the top of the pyramid,
Mm,
that's where you become an older, wiser member of the partnership. But something I think quite surprising happens then. Because there's only a limited amount of equity in a law firm, they need you at senior level to leave and retire.
yeah.
So you sign up to a date when you're going to leave when you become a partner, because there's an agreement about what that age is. Is it 60? What is the age? And so many law firms, not just in the UK market, but across the world, struggle with what happens to senior lawyers in the 5 years before retirement, because they're suddenly going to be disenfranchised. They're walking towards what they feel might be a cliff edge because there's nothing for them to do after that age, and they have to move on or have a massive demotion from partner all the way back down to consultant. And yet they've actually helped to build this business, and they've even invested money that they've borrowed from a bank to do it. And that's
It's a
why I think
lot
the
of
model is
work
broken.
to get to that level in itself, to then get there, to have to raise the capital, to put in, to then see a return. It's, it's 10 years of slog before you even get to that point, potentially. It's,
Well, at least, I mean, back when I first started out, some people made it to partnership in 7 or 8 years. Now it can be 15 of perspiring to get to the equity. Then you take the bank loan. Then you hope that the firm's going to continue to grow. And if you think about a normal investment, Jason, you take some money and you invest it and you expect a return.
Well, you do.
Well, actually, in a law firm, in a traditional model where you buy into the equity, and it's not real equity like the sort of equity that's on a stock exchange, you buy in with a loan, but you don't get any return on capital. You just get an income. You buy the right to an income over a period of years. And then when you come to leave at a date where you may not be, let's face it, 60 these days is young, right?
Yeah, it is.
Who wants to stop? So one of the things that we've done is to create a different way of looking at the pyramid completely. So we think that
does the pyramid even exist in your world?
Well, not in our world, no.
Okay.
It's a level playing field where basically it's a 70% fee share, not a 30% fee share. You have the opportunity but not the obligation to buy real equity. So you can buy real shares in our company, and who knows, one day we may float and there may be an exit, and therefore there may be a multiple return on your capital investment. We've also then said when it comes to retirement, we don't believe in retirement. We believe that lawyers should be able to work until they want to stop. And the only thing that otherwise would make them stop is they become incompetent. And when they come to that point where they say, look, enough is enough, we think they've got something of value. They've got a client base that they will have served, hopefully, for many years and built relationships through serving that client base. So they're not transactional. Well, that's got a value, that client base. And
of course it does.
I learned that back at St James's Place, where they have something called practice buyout, where young financial advisors are supported to buy the practices of older retiring financial advisors.
Yeah, I've known about this and this scheme that you offer, and I think it's a great scheme, and it also lets someone know that for all their years of hard work, they're not going to get to, like you kind of alluded to and mentioned earlier, they're going to get to a certain age, and then that's it. It's gone. It's swallowed into the firm, and I think I think it's a great scheme, and it gives someone a nice retirement in itself.
Well,
separate it gives to that of the pension.
Yeah, exactly. It gives you a capital play, but I think there's something it gives lawyers that's really important to lawyers in my experience of them. It's a small word, but it's an important word, and that word is control. So if you think right now, we're in this strange world where how many of us genuinely feel in control of what's happening with this virus that we're all living with? And law firms have been changing their shape, adapting actually remarkably quickly. And I would argue that some of them have done 5 years of evolution in 5 months to change the way that they're structured and how they work and operate. But that control, so if you're a lawyer sitting there, do you know whether or not you've got a job?
It's a good question.
And who's in control of your fate, your career? So what we want to do is to say to people, you should take back control. So
I like that.
You should have control of your destiny, of when you work, where you work, how you work, who you work for, what you charge, and when you want to retire. And when you do want to retire, then you should be able to take any capital value in your client base that exists. There's no guarantee it will be there. It depends what you do and who you are. But if there is some, it should be yours. And you should even be able to bring in someone to run your practice and just take an income from it. So you don't actually stop. You don't stop earning from the business that you built. Why would you do that?
It's a really great scheme to hear about, and I think that what you said before, normally you're not in control of your destiny. Many people at the moment are in the mercy of a partner's hands and how able they are to lead a department through the current pandemic. And well, we've seen some firms acting, but if you're acting emotionally and you're not acting rationally, loads of people let conveyancers go. Oh, there we go. All of a sudden, the stamp duty. Now we need to hire them all again.
Yeah.
So you see it time and time again. But I do agree with you. I think the legal profession has acted really quickly, and it may be the reason it's evolved 5 months. Done 5 years of evolution in 5 months is because it was so slow moving previously. Who knows? So tell us in terms of, I guess, one bit of advice I always give to junior lawyers, and please tell me and expand on this if you do agree, is I always say to junior lawyers now, and I think you've hit the nail on the head when you spoke about kind of going up those runs of the ladder and how long it can take. I always say the best bit of advice is start trying to build a client base as soon as you possibly can, because then your destiny is very much in your own hands. And don't be the person who gets to 7-8 years PQE and you've got no client relationships because it's all driven by the partner and you're a workhorse for the partner. Start trying to get clients early on. Would you agree with that?
Oh, definitely. And it's interesting. Back in my day, when I was a young lawyer, we had this phrase that was used to kind of segment us. And you were a finder, a minder, a grinder, or a binder. So a finder is sort of got a bit of a Ronseal testing going on here. A finder is someone who finds clients.
Yep.
A minder is someone who looks after clients. A grinder is someone who does loads of the actual work, and a binder is someone who helps make teams. And the argument was that you naturally were stronger in one of those areas than you were in all of the others. Now, I actually, when I think about that, I think that's absolutely bonkers, because lawyers are in the relationship business. A law firm does not have a relationship with a client. Two humans have a relationship with each other, and they both happen to work inside a brand. So your client might be, I don't know, Caterpillar, and the law firm might be Allen and Overy. But Caterpillar and Allen and Overy don't have a relationship. It's Fred and Sally who work at the two businesses that have got a relationship. Now, who is Fred and who is Sally? Well, they're two people. And people are different, and they like different things, and they buy different things from different places. So I think there's space for what used to unfairly be called a grinder, the sort of person who does all the legal work, it's a bit technical. You want to keep them in a dark room, never let them see the client. What about the client that likes the detail?
I think you make a very valid sales point, Michael. I think
It's
it
about
is about
matching,
the
isn't
client.
it?
Well, it's. I like to think I'm a sales expert, but when you strip it back, it sounds like basics, but so many people get it wrong. What the client wants is what you give them.
Well, and again, this is where I think there's actually historically quite a lot of arrogance. So the legal profession
Yeah,
says we build and structure law firms to suit lawyers, not to suit clients. Well, obviously
yeah.
that's the wrong way around. We should be doing everything to suit clients. And
Mm.
law firms say that they do that, but I really don't see them being client-led businesses. And one of the things I've been passionate about is, having been a client and bought legal services, I have only my own subjective view, but it's a view of what clients want to buy. And what they want to buy is often not what law firms, well, they don't even want to use the word sell. I mean, they're better now. Let's be fair, they're better now. But
Yes, I
for
do agree.
me, I think in a funny old world, we've got a lawyer and a client, two human beings. One, they both need each other. One needs advice, and the other needs to be paid for it. What do we need to do? We need to match them together. So let me not trivialize this too much, but aren't we just in the role of a dating agency, finding the right matches of people for each other?
Owning a recruitment agency, I would say that yes, you've got exactly the right ethos when it comes to winning business. And I I think that a lot of people, and I think people who have maybe risen up the equity scale, people have this mindset, not necessarily in law but in any industry. This is a client of the company. This is a client of the firm. And it's when people have that kind of mindset as well, and see the client as some kind of object. The client, it's all driven by personal relationships. We're in the services business, we're a services economy, but so many businesses do lose sight of that, and that's how you find partners leaving your practice with a massive wad of a client base, because even if you hold them to restricted covenants, the client's not going to stay anyway. And then that's where you find yourself in that territory.
Well, it's interesting. You've used a phrase there that I love, the phrase restrictive covenant. So, first of all,
It's
I don't.
restrictive.
Yeah, well, I don't believe in them. I think
Yeah.
they're fundamentally wrong. And if a firm ever said, XYZ PLC is our client, then I would ask them what they need restrictive covenants for with a single individual lawyer leaving them.
I agree with you, and
they're either a client of the firm or they're not. And if they're not, what do you need the restriction for?
Exactly, and it's we come across this time and time again when partners come to us, and it's a relationship business, and people must not lose sight of that. And I think to bring this back to the advice that we're giving to junior lawyers, it's build relationships, and I think that's a really valuable lesson. And it's we get asked all the time, about questions, and that's always one of the first ones. What advice would you give to someone, Michael? We get a lot of people who listen to this podcast who are maybe starting out in their career. They're more at the junior end of the scale. Having been there, done there, worked in-house, what advice would you give to people yourself, maybe starting out, or a bit more junior in PQE, 1, 2, 3 years, etc.?
I would give the same advice to anyone setting out to do anything. Find something that makes you feel passionate and do that, because it's much easier to work every single day, often long hours, if you're passionate about what you do. Now, if you're passionate about working for the world's leading investment banks, get yourself in a Magic Circle firm and you will be happy as Larry. If you really want to work with owner-managed or new startup or fast growth or tech businesses, go to a firm like that. So you have to kind of try and get a feel for what drives your passion. So I think one of the most important things I would say to young lawyers or anyone starting out their career is work out what motivates you. And I think increasingly we see in the younger generation, and now I'm 50, I can call people the younger generation. I think we see in the younger generation, people want to know what the purpose is. What is their purpose for themselves, and what is the purpose of their organization? And I think firms that offer that clarity of purpose, mission, vision, why they are what they are, where they're going, and why that's important, that really motivates, I think, young lawyers. So understand your passion and what drives you, and find a firm that aligns to that, because then it's, again, back to the dating game. It's a good match of the firm and the opportunity you'll have to the young lawyer and the experience that they know they crave and will thrive with.
I think that's absolutely great advice. I think purpose it is important, and you need to have a sense of fulfillment in what you do. That's what drives happiness. It's having that underlying passion. Just lastly, what's the biggest lesson that you've learned since running a business? Well, multiple businesses. What's kind of one of your pinnacle lessons that you can share with us? Not to put you on the spot or anything, Michael.
Well, one of the most important lessons I've learned, there's a kind of a bit of a line in the song that's, I get knocked down, I get up again. So
yeah.
I think in life you are going to face difficulty and adversity, and it's about realizing that success is not linear. It comes in fits and starts. It's like buses. There'll be 3 buses at once and a load of success, and then you'll have a real problem or a crisis. Life is not straightforward, and success is not linear. So my learning is about developing resilience so that you can cope with what life chucks at you. And I think if you are following a purpose, you know what you're passionate about, and you can cope with adversity, then you'll be all right in the end. And there's always for me that sense, and I say this to my own kids, just do your best and you'll be all right in the end. And that's literally a simple kind of rationale for how to live your life, I think.
It is, but it's very, very true, and I think that's even advice in itself. Michael, it's been absolutely great talking to you. Thanks for the last 35 minutes. If people want to find out more about you and Carbon Law, where can they go to?
So you can find out a bit more about me on Twitter at @MJBurne, or you can go and find out about us at carbonlawpartners.com. And we're always very happy to have a chat with anybody. We love to talk.
Fantastic. That's Michael Burne from Carbon Law Partners. I'm Jason Connolly. This is the Career Success Podcast. Until next time, goodbye.